Here. Colleen Poole, the commissioner. Ordinarily, we would start with the review of the minutes and adoption of those minutes, but we had a little snafu that the note taker, the traditional note taker was on holiday, and the substitute note taker neglected to type up the minutes, so we'll have to deal with those at our next meeting. All right, so the first item on the agenda, the report on sessions in municipal archives between April and December 2015. At our last meeting, there was a report on the accessions through April. So, Sylvia Kolar.
Sure. So from April to December, we accessioned just over 2,500 cubic feet. Some of the highlights include a collection from the Gracie Mansion Conservancy, and that pretty much established us as their repository because they had never contributed to the archives before. So that was a small collection. It was only 23 cubic feet, but going forward will be the repository for them. We also acquired the Ebbets Field home plate and a stadium seat from the Historical Society, which is a nice artifact. Let's see, one of the biggest collections yes, the handshoe collection. There it is. It's on the second page. It's the last one, which is just over 500 cubic feet. So they're all detailed here. We are discussing ways to present accessions going forward and the information in the summaries. So it may be a different format going forward. Some of this is obviously not administrative.
And on the handshoe collection in particular, I would love the handshoe collection and the Ebbets Field collection. I'd like to make two notes. One, we acquired the Ebbets Field home plate from the Brooklyn Historical Society because it was gifted to them by the former borough president of Brooklyn, but it was gifted to him as a gift to him in his office, right, as the borough president. And as with mayoral gifts, those gifts come to the municipal archives, and it has historical and cultural value. The Historical Society wasn't sure how they would be presenting it, so they were happy to send it to us, and we are going to work on conserving it and then protecting it with a plexiglass case so that it can be an artifact in our collection for forever. But it does highlight this issue that we are grappling with now, and which Sylvia discussed at our last meeting, which is that because the archives and records management departments weren't working together seamlessly, and because there wasn't staff to monitor accessions, there are huge gaps in the collections that we have. So there are some agencies that were created in the 70s and 80s for which we have no executive level records. We are reaching out to get those. We are making those transfers happen, but it will really expand the collection because researchers will be able to use those records. If we don't take them in now, they'll be gone. So that's one thing. And then on the handshoe collection, this is a collection that was de-accessioned some long time ago. The handshoe files, this refers to the plaintiff, who with 3 or 4 other people brought a civil case protesting that the way the police department monitored protest movements between the 50s through the 70s violated the Constitution. A judge agreed, and they put in place the guidelines on how the police can monitor people who are protesting. But these were the documents that predated that suit. So they start from the 50s and they go through the anti-war protest movements of the 70s, and so they had long been thought to be lost. It was a bad sentence, but as we sort of are reorganizing and itemizing and figuring out what we have, and just as the records part, the records manager located and this amazing trove of materials. And now our trick is going to be to sort of get them into the inventory as soon as we can. And ideally, we would make digital copies available and have people crowdsource their identities. Because otherwise, it's going to be very hard if it's not a particularly well-known person to know who owns there. But it's kind of amazing, I think.
Yes.
We also are processing the NYPD photographs. A lot of those 60s and 70s photographs do actually document probably some of the things that are in the Hampshire files. Be a nice connection gallery.
I'm speaking pretty much out of turn, but just to throw it out there and we'll see if it makes sense. But so I'm curating an exhibit about the Vietnam War, which will be next fall, October 17th. I'm just wondering if maybe we want to try to just crowdsource some photographs. We might do something in tandem because we'll be publicizing it.
It would be great. I think that's great. It would be wonderful to figure out how to do that and to work with you in collaboration, so that that's only going to improve knowledge of the existence of the collection. Right, great. Out of turn. Okay. Good. All right. So that's the accessions report. Any questions? Okay. The collection processing projects.
Okay, the next sheet under your summary of the session is kind of an overview of processing projects that are underway, some of the bigger ones. We had a really big project at our offsite storage facility that is organizing and identifying and cleaning up 74 pallets of oversized and medium-sized ledgers. Ken can speak a little bit about where those came from and why they've been in a static state for so long.
What would happen typically, this is the time you get a phone call from someone at DCAS, building manager, municipal building, announcing they were cleaning out the basement of the municipal building that we didn't come over. They found that day we would be hustle over and make it fall. Really not appraising it, but knowing that probably 80 to 90% of it was not our kind. But we had no doing that appraisal every day. So we just took it all, put it on pallets, and packed it away in off-site, hoping someday we would have time to do that time. Thanks.
Thanks to Marcia.
And we are finding some wonderful stuff, but not right.
So she's almost halfway through the pallets, which are incredibly dirty and incredibly dusty and in various forms of decay. We're keeping a little less than 10%, but there are various levels of review. So Marcia, who's the archivist working on the project, kind of, if it's more than likely, it tends to be a financial ledger, a daily intake and outtake, which we don't keep. But when she does find something that tends to spark interest or something, she does some background research. She gets in touch with the librarian. She gets in touch with either me or Michael, who's a curator here, photography, or Ken. Then we go through and then she puts it, there's different stages of the process of the review so that we're not just throwing things in the trash. So we are keeping documentation of everything that will be disposed of, and final approval will go through all those people, and then finally through Colleen. And things that we are going to keep will be formally accessioned, or they'll be added on as an accrual to existing collections. Of interest are Department of Hospital ledgers, a whole series of them that will complement our almshouse collection and processing them. So it's the next phase of the almshouse. So it's an interesting find and timely. And then
Did we bring in a sample of
We
what
did.
we're getting rid of? Because
Yeah.
we thought, well, maybe we'd be concerned.
so
this
here's
is an
one example. If you don't mind getting your hands. And then this is an example. That's just a financial receipt book, a checkbook. And then this is an example of data that has very minimal text and has actually a lot of different, we don't know who the originating agency was. We don't really know what these numbers mean. It's an accounting ledger is what it looks like.
Is this like 18th century or?
19. So if you'd like, you guys can come through that.
So these both would not be kept.
Right.
And there are examples, and as well, I mean, look at them, because, we're making our best judgment using archival principles and standards. And as the review board, if you have questions you want to ask, in general about this process, this is a good time to do it. And I think this is, we're preparing to move our archival collections from their, warehouse to a climate-controlled, appropriate location. And in doing that, we will be examining our holdings to make sure that we're not just moving everything if it has no historical, cultural, meaningful value. And the person who's been processing these sets of ledgers has really, been pretty painstaking in going through and identifying what she thinks is value based on her understanding of New York government, New York City government, history, how researchers would use the materials.
Yeah.
She-
Sorry.
Who is she?
Marcia Kirk. So she's also considering if there's another entity that unlike it's a publication that isn't, it's of interest and that doesn't really fall under our collecting policy. I mean, they are putting.
She's found, last week she found obviously, work of art, literally, renderings of the Croton Act. 30s version. Hand painted, just not painted, but absolutely beautiful. What would that be doing? It was.
Are you digitizing even though wouldn't keep this?
We would not. So the reason we would not digitize them is because we have very limited resources.
Fine.
And so we are going to digitize the collections that are of most value, of most use to people. And the judgment of the archivist is, and Sylvia, correct me if I'm wrong, the judgment of the archivist is that these, if there had been a retention schedule applied to them, they would have been, disposed of back in the day, 8 years after the data was entered into the book, and they would never have become part of a historical collection. The reason they're there is because they were sitting in the basement of the municipal building, and they were old, and as Ken said, there was no time to look through them and make that determination then. So they've been sitting, and if the archivist had the resources to make that evaluation then, a lot of these things would have been disposed of at that point. So now we're at the point of getting rid of them.
And it's interesting though, because having them together like this now also offers us the opportunity to sample something, or if it's really unique but probably not archival or within our collecting mission, and Ken kind of sees it as a prize or something that's just off the wall, like he would keep that too. So, I mean, there's so many elements to the appraisal that.
Kind of a quest.
Yes.
God bless archivists. Our historians and writers, we think of Ron Chernow and what he did with Hamilton. It's just not normal. He just went through material that others might have discarded and then becomes part of the story. It's just she had space that writers, every type of writer would find some value. I'm just wishing.
Yeah.
So about the 10%, you mentioned that one, artwork, but for the other materials.
Well, as part of our show and tell, Karen, we decided that in addition to showing you what we don't think has value, we brought a sampling of something we think has great value. These are property conveyances, and if you would like to speak to what they are, that'd be great.
Abstract of conveyances. Part 1891 abstracts, blah, blah, blah. Laws of 19. Seems like shortly after consolidation, the city's, I guess you call it, the city register, was part of common finance, took this extraordinary work and hired incredibly talented and careful people to go through all the old deeds and kind of abstract them. In case you could research by the new block numbers, you don't know New York City sold some person is extraordinarily work figuring out who owned every piece, every lot within that block back as far as, in this case, down. That's, okay, 1784, Big West Herring, chunks of it, on and on and on. Somewhere here, and Bird, awesome. Oh, a little map. Just a little block of the building. That's right, but on the name. Extraordinary work. They didn't do the whole city. Anyway.
So this is an example of something that Marcia would have seen and brought to your attention.
And I'd like to be retained, because it,
David Berger, 1872, and Charleston. It's kind of work you could never.
And what we did with those was we rescued them, we vacuumed, and we shelved them according to law, so that they're immediately. And then it's semi-high, very high level processing, but now we have intellectual control over them, and now we can actually use them, and they can actually just be used.
And we love it because it's, everything in New York City got locked down. So you knew that, but you can find going on this website. Boom, there you go.
How many blocks would that represent?
That's one block. That is one.
Yes.
You know, you can. Street ownership is extraordinary, but they've done the work for us.
and then we've been on the same collection, we've been asked by the Mayor's Correspondence Unit in response to a request from the Stuyvesant for looking at how to commemorate the existence of the Association for the Benefit of Colored Orphans in the asylum that was on Fifth Avenue between 43rd and 44th Street. And it was just after we discovered the conveyances, so and then we looked up in the aldermanic records what happened. So after the land was first granted to the association with the stipulation that they couldn't ever transfer it. And of course, after the riots and the destruction, the association wanted to move a bit further away from danger. And they had to go to the Board of Aldermen and petition to be able to transfer the land and then acquire additional land. Ended up being in Harlem. But this has the record of the conveyance in 1854 of that property. So it's interesting. And, you know, the students are hoping to figure out a way to work with the Department of Transportation, commemorate its location. So you know, you want to have that. And it's very, I think, different than with ledgers where you can't really tell what it is.
So the archivist is trying to determine the legibility of the material and the amount of information and the legibility of the materials.
And the usefulness, and whether or not just because they're old they're archival. And they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, some things are, and some things aren't. And that 3-step review, I think, makes sure that there's not one person's point of view that is driving this, right? So that you incorporate the original reviewers, you incorporate Sylvia's archivist and Ken, and then finally incorporate me. And I'm a pack rat, so I don't want to hear this.
Each piece goes through
the name of the collection and the description of the collection, and you know, if one had a question you could ask, well, I'd like to see that. So if there's I think a sufficient.
So the original archivist, so Marcia gives a report to you, which comments on item level things?
We started with an item level because we had no idea what it was. So we were really, really meticulous, but now she's finding things on different palettes that relate to other things that were for disposal and are just a continuing in year. So financial ledger of X agency from this year to this year and then the next following. So, I mean, there are big collections scattered about, so that's the other value of having one sole person kind of in the midst of it.
Right. So then it goes from you to Ken.
Me and Ken together sometimes, just so that I'm also still learning.
And just to put on my other hat, it really points out the value of record management. Because if the records had been managed through their life cycle, a determination would have been made at that point, archival, recycling. And now we're beginning to do that in a real way, so that's good.
The micro-fiche process, what that was done. Those documents are.
We still have them.
Anything that we've ever microfilmed.
I'm thinking before you.
Right, for 30 years. I suppose it's microfilm access.
But that micro-fiche, what is that? It was a little place.
Yeah. Do we have fiche stuff? We have microfilm.
Yes, we lose film. The same thing. Fiche is just a
Yeah.
But we only, it wasn't disposal purposes.
And if we were digitizing collections, we would keep the originals as well, right? Because they're a value.
And it was all these, I just didn't understand. You said it was the second page.
Oh, yeah, I started on this page. Yeah. So this is these are the highlights.
Oh, okay. So all of these
our
are from the
processing.
ledgers.
And the Alms House project, which is another processing project, is another illustration of ledgers that have enormous value because they list the names of the people who were in the almshouses, where they came from, if they died, what the cause of death was, what their ages were. So they're rich, right? They have so much. And those things as a point of reference that there's look at random numbers and say, that's so much.
But the Alms House was not part of.
No.
Oh, so these are all separate.
These are all separate
project.
projects.
Okay.
I do have an example behind you, Pauline, of an Alms House ledger, if you guys are interested. So before this project started, these were not in boxes and on open shelves, and we are doing an item level cataloging project and conservation project to and the as well as tipped, whether it's a tear in some pages, they're really big.
I was just at the remnant of the Alms House Cemetery. There's a small plaque there this morning, but I remember when
On Broadway.
No, there was one right over here, but just beyond the when you go down to the there's a little triangle where they
Oh, in City Hall
found
Park?
several. There are still several remains, and one small hole had I think 12 inches. Trying to.
It probably all died. So, very.
And they're also being digitized. Well, a selection of the collection is being digitized.
Of almost.
But, they can't tell you why the person was they won't complain. Right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I think this song
Yeah.
was 1720. This is actually.
The Alms House is where you went.
Into district,
Yeah, I had nowhere else to go.
Homeless, the workshops, people had to make
They might have to
they were
work for their
forced to
board.
work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That we have photos from the period, and people making baskets and doing different kinds of work. The product was then sold, I guess, to offset their.
But run by the city, yes.
Yes. Yeah, there was a city run on Blackwell's Island.
Funny, I've just heard about them for years, but I don't think I ever really asked, how they worked.
You wonder.
So these are several Alms Houses.
Yeah.
This document, we've got something for each Alms.
That's what we're kind of figuring out now. There were a number of institutions located on hospitals. Curable Hospital, House, something like that. And they weren't really too good about indicating which is a to, like we have this wonderful archivist who's puzzling that out. So, all we know is it's from one of those.
But I recall something. This block. 17.
You have to see, did you?
Right.
I mean, you could, it doesn't say. Very cool. You kind of wonder what happened to that.
And the handwriting.
Probably went out of husband.
Did you ever get out of here?
You probably could, if you could find someone with an eye. And then find them in the census, sort of. Probably could, using some of our other.
The archaeologists had found a man and woman together, and the fellow that was kind of a hero trying to figure out what's this all about.
You can make up lots of stories.
Yeah, really.
I'm just gonna.
They tended to be segregated too, like everything else.
Sometimes spaces indicate, but often
Yeah.
not.
The black sign in there.
Yeah, right, unless if it's not there,
Sometimes
yeah.
it will say.
Yeah.
And that, of course, they never recorded religion.
All right, so,
So some of the other projects, we're trying to document Doris. So we went to former Commissioner Pena and Bachman, who was the first commissioner, and we had over the summer processed those collections and been valuable even to me and to the current commissioner. So that was a success. This is block and lot inventories. The next project is a huge collection that's been on site for a long time and is very consistently used, just reboxing and actually cataloging at the box level and kind of shaping that up. We're almost done, and we've freed up a lot of space in storage because of it. Another very large collection taking up a lot of room in our on-site storage is the insolvency assignments, which were bankruptcy notes, basically. They're organized by surname, and they were brought in a while ago in archival boxes, but they weren't all correct. So we're just reorganizing, reboxing, and creating box level inventories of those as well, and also saving a lot of space. And then the conveyances we discussed, and the sheet behind that one is actually all of the processing projects that are underway or in process. But I just thought some of them. So on the next spreadsheet, that's everything that's going on. And that's the most current case.
So you have people working on all of these?
Not all at the same time. They're just either in the midst, just recently completed, or to be done.
In the next.
Yeah.
and before we get to Bloomberg Collection, I think it's worth noting also that in the January plan for the current fiscal year and going forward in fiscal year 2017, we received funding for an additional process process. And looking at Chris, because it's been on this board for a long time, and I looked at the minutes from prior board meetings, and there was a lot of discussion of the lack of resources that had been allocated to the archives. I think we've turned the corner and are actually bringing resources in so we can expand the number of collections we work on and make more. It's going to make a huge difference.
And they're high-level archivists, so they're able to manage interns and other people on staff. I think that helps a lot. Training, happening.
So rather than attrition, we're growing, so it feels good.
With city funding?
The city funding, yes. I mean, we have a number of grant funded projects too. We're particularly proud of the project funding in the NEH because it recognizes the value of the collections. So now on to the last item of the collection being processed, the Bloomberg Collection. And of course, we all have a copy of the daily news story. As we reported in the prior meetings, we had a lot of, we made big efforts to take control of all of the materials that were held by the city. And at some point we learned that there was an additional trove of materials that wasn't held by the city and hadn't been conveyed to the archives as we believe required by the charter. And those are email records on Bloomberg.net. So we have continue to work with the law department to work to approach the former mayor and his staff about transferring all of those records to the archive, and that those conversations are underway. We are in agreement that the city charter defines records in a very clear way, which is anything you create in the course of doing your government work. So that covers these emails, and they need to be preserved and then transferred. So that's what we're pursuing, and hopefully that will also bear fruit sooner rather than later. One of the issues, and I reported on this at our last meeting, but I'm just going to bring it back up again. You know, in the wake of the Giuliani matter, the council passed a local law that requires the treatment. So it requires that the commissioner shall ensure the records of any city officer or agency that are of historical, research, cultural, or other important value shall be delivered directly to the department's municipal archives. The commissioner, in my view, can't really do that, right? If the charter is there, but there's not, you know, what do you do? Run into the site and grab the records? So we are drafting a version of the Presidential Records Act that would set timetables and compel the owner of the records to provide them to the archives rather than reverse, which we think is much more enforceable. And that's underway, and we will draft and we'll finish it soon and begin the process. Now, up to you.
Is the status of Sylvia, of your processing of the materials you've received from the law?
We have processing plans in place. We haven't acted, so to speak.
Okay.
I mean, keep reviewing what we can do short term. And I have an example of what we'd like to accomplish in summer, and you have it there as well. But it's really hard to, first of all, while initially we would love to start processing the electronic collections to begin with, but we don't have that infrastructure in place yet to do that. But we have the model in place. We are working with the developers to develop the model, and it's really strong and robust, and a lot of open source software, and Lara inspired us. So that's in the works. But in the meantime, what we can do is create an overall collection level description of what we do have and do. Once we get one of the new archivists on board in the next few months, their job will be Bloomberg, managing, processing a box level inventory of what's offsite, the paper records, organizing requests for correspondence files, which is still in the correspondence, but we have access to that database. Things live in databases. Just trying to make things fit. So if we get the word out there that we have access to the section, that's. We're also working with law mail. We've come up with a protocol on how to make that available because it's not processed yet. And researchers are, the protocols for accessing Bloomberg email has been written up and approved by both Ken and Colleen, noting the fact that, people need to know that this has not gone through formal processing. We have a review for personal privacy information, but the attorney-client privilege collections are not accessible by law. So we just want the researchers to know that and sign off on that before. And then in terms of the paper collections, those are much easier to grant access to. So we're working with law, putting together how we would do that. So the law department actually gave the archivists here the authority to flag things that seem like they could be attorney-client privileged and briefed us on what those documents might look like. Pretty sure that archivists here were already aware of these issues, but we had a review, so that was helpful. So what the process would be, the proposed process going forward for the paper collections would be if we get a request for them, we bring them on site, we do a folder inventory of the boxes, and review for attorney-client privilege and personal privacy information issues. We flag them, law comes in and reviews, and we either redact or remove with a note saying that we've removed something, and then make it accessible.
How many researchers?
Not very many, most from media, say 4 or 5 that I've dealt with.
I mean, we receive a lot of requests to look at email, and because we don't have records yet, they have been by the law department for attorney-client privilege issues. Those requests are transferred as FOIL requests to the law department, and they produce documents. And I think there may be for half a dozen of those in addition to come and look at either the email that has been cleared on a computer in Sylvia's office, or have researchers who have looked through the paper document.
Or so the materials that have been cleared, or those the first 7?
Well, I think yesterday, just recently, we got the rest of 2012. Yesterday or the day before, recently. So now we have, for 2012, we have the emails of a small group of administration officials.
That's in 2000.
Pardon me? 2002, sorry, did I say 2012? 2002. So for the very first year, we have emails that have been cleared for a small group of officials in the Bloomberg administration. And I think there are 10 of them, including the former mayor. And there are not very many emails to or from the former mayor in that collection.
So does that mean that it's been cleared for, so the attorney-client materials that has Doris then done separate analysis of what is historical importance?
Well, I think, the nature of email going through item by item doesn't make sense because there's strings of emails in context that way. So I'm pretty sure the process of going through email wouldn't happen. But what we would do is would be able to use. Initially, I had attempted to use an open source software that's kind of been used by Stanford and developed by Stanford called ePad, but because DoIT and other technical issues and formats exist, we couldn't really implement that. And in that software actually sorts by sender and user and subject, and you can tag things that way. And it's a processing tool to use. And it goes from accessioning it into your collection to creating access to it. But we've kind of scratched that, and then we're moving towards a completely different structure to support the process. And that's pragmatic. And it's part of a much bigger mission to process digital collections on the whole, not just email. So, I mean, we have it all planned out. We just have to build it, and that will take time. But this works right now because we have access. We can request it, and we can curate as we go along and present. And, I guess that high level acknowledgement of the collection should be the first.
the new staff that's coming on board, they'll be working at least partly on processing some of this, but with respect to the email, that involves setting and organizing it. Or,
Right now, it's we load it into a researcher Outlook file, Outlook account in my office, which is far from perfect.
so potentially in the future, it would just be accessible through some system that's more geared towards.
Yeah. Yeah, so we would have digital collections at Doris, ideally. And then we would have Office of the Mayor, Mayor Bloomberg as a category. And then you can look at his correspondence, his email, photographs, however his collection is going to be organized. And you can have entryways that way. But then, you know, the system we're building, it'll be Google-ish in terms of search facets, and building it so that we can, anyone who searches just Bloomberg will get anything related to Bloomberg in any of our collection ever. Obviously, we, as archivists, recommend that search term because it would be too big, and that's where the reference interview takes place, but like, that's the goal. Everything will be tagged and subject terms will be added to these.
So it sounds like there maybe some of the other file, the paper records, there is a filtering for what is a historical importance for email because of the quantity. There's less.
For the email,
Yeah.
at this point.
Okay.
And that's why we came up with these protocols for email, because we don't have the infrastructure to provide it in a way that it's already processed.
But in the law department's process, they divide the email into multiple categories.
So what we have is open and accessible to the public as they deemed it.
They flag